over.
Chairman, I think
Yes.
we're just waiting for the live stream has just started. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, then. So we go to question. Question 1 is Councillor Ed Mossop to Councillor Tom Ashton. Have you a supplementary?
Just to say, a very comprehensive answer by you, Councillor Tom, and your officer, your new officer, is very much on the ball, and I look forward to contributing something in the debate on item 13. So no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 2 is Councillor Leonard to Councillor Leyland. Have your supplementary, please.
Yes, just in the last paragraph, he mentions the fact that the maintenance requirements over the coming years, but I don't think we're ever made aware of what the projected maintenance requirements were, or if we were, perhaps you could just remind me, please. And if the buildings are too big, why did we not condense ourselves into this one of the parts of the building and then sublet to create a revenue, the other part? Thank you.
Councillor Leyland.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm quite happy to provide the maintenance costs, Mr. Chairman, and I will respond regarding the subletting idea as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Question 3 is Councillor Leonard to Councillor Leyland. Have your supplementary?
Yes. No, there's no response on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So question 4 is Councillor Leonard to Councillor Leyland. Have your supplementary on that one?
Yeah, it's just a question. I think on the very last sentence that's printed on the page, I think it should say our rather than there, unless I've misread that, because it was intimate that they're getting a £10 million saving and not us.
Councillor
Thank you,
Leyland.
Councillor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor, for pointing that out. I will make sure that's corrected in the minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Question 5 is Councillor Makinson Sanders to Councillor Leyland. Have your supplementary? No?
No,
Right.
no, thank you. That's fine.
Move on. Question 6 is Councillor Makinson Sanders to Councillor Steve Kirk. Have your supplementary?
Well, I feel guilty about asking a supplementary because I know we need to get on. But in view of the government's overruling of the move to extend the season, how do you now view the council's actions?
Councillor Kirk.
Hello there. Thank you. I believe the council is right to do all it can to extend the season. That's always been a long-term goal of ours. There are various ways of doing this, and if, unfortunately, certain things impact the way we can do that, be that objections from our partners or COVID-19 for that matter, I still don't think it's wrong to try and pursue something that we know is the right thing to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question 7 is Councillor Makinson Sanders to Councillor Leyland. Have your supplementary?
Well, I do actually, because I think somebody pressed the panic button at about 4:20 this afternoon, because I suddenly had a rush of emails about Vital and Viable in Louth, which, quite frankly, it's the first feedback we've had since I don't know, February or whenever it was. We don't know what the clear strategy is, so perhaps we ought to get to grips with it. There's been, and I just want to correct you, there's been no involvement at all with councillors or the town council. It was presented to the clerk only as a fait accompli. And the survey, I'm going to ask you why we haven't supported our local businesses in any of our market towns who overwhelmingly support days of free parking. And I thought in the past we had Small Business Saturday, which looked to boost trade for our market towns in particular. So I just wonder, I know you're going to disagree, but I'm just wondering if Vital and Viable is actually vital and viable.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question, Councillor Mason Summers. I do disagree with you, actually, because a lot of effort has gone into Vital and Viable, and it has been well received, and there's lots going on across the district. In relation to how businesses want and seek support, I think we're doing all that we can to support those businesses. The ED team are doing a good job. Councillor Grist oversight on that is good, and I'm quite content with where it's all at. But I suspect we're going to disagree for anything that happens in Louth. I know that you have a track record of disagreement of things that happen. Local businesses are quite keen to engage with us, and we're quite content with where it's at. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Item 7, communication from the chairman. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all councillors, officers and staff for their hard work and continued support during this very difficult year and uncertain times. A special thanks goes to Anne Good and her team for their help and support for me during my role as chairman. Sandra and I would like to wish you and your families a very peaceful Christmas and a healthy and prosperous new year. Thank you very much. Item 8 is report from the chairman of the exec board.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'm pleased to see the report was actually included in the papers for the council, because quite often it isn't, and I do apologise for that. That's entirely my fault, not officers. The report is there to be read, but I think it's quite important to express the theme that's delivered in the report tonight, and that's all the work that our various teams are doing to support our communities and businesses as we deal with the COVID pandemic, and as we hopefully come out of it as well once the effects of the vaccine are delivered. Just in respect of our involvement, and it's not in the report, this is just a verbal part, as you know, East Lindsey is very well involved with the Local Resilience Forum and also the Lincolnshire Outbreak Engagement Board. And that work and our placement on that is well received. And we've done all that we can to assist the NHS in delivery of testing sites. And I believe the site in Skegness is seeing significant progress in terms of the regional testing centre. And that is, I believe, been quite something to behold. We are supporting the NHS in any way we can. And just to reiterate, the comms all has to be directed from the NHS, and we will support their comms through our teams so that the message goes out to our residents about the vital work in terms of the vaccine delivery and also in terms of the testing. As you know, the vaccine programme will be delivered in a phased way. The first vaccine licensed has particular peculiarities about its storage and distribution, which means that will be delivered in a phased manner. And the NHS do have a very good delivery mechanism for vaccination. It's happened with the flu vaccine and various other vaccine programs over time. So I just implore councillors to wait for the NHS information. It will come in its good time, and encourage our residents when they receive their letters or text messages to take up the option of having the vaccine. This is about protecting individuals, it's about protecting households, it's about protecting communities, and of course it's about protecting Lincolnshire and of course the wider country as this goes through. As I was saying earlier, there is a theme to the report tonight. Our grant teams, economic development grant teams, have done a fantastic job in delivering the grants that are available. The current schemes are active and have been well patronised by businesses, and the teams have delivered remarkably in such short time, setting up the grants and also in terms of delivery. So I'm sure you'll join with me in my appreciation for all their work. We now have COVID advisors deployed. Those have been on the go since the 26th of November, starting in Boston, and they will be seen across our district over the next weeks coming up to Christmas, and they will have quite an important role as we deal with the fact that we're in tier 3 and making sure that people are fully advised and businesses are fully advised about what the issues are about being in tier 3. In terms of our wellbeing teams, again, part of the work of this council that's been pretty critical over the course of the pandemic We've received 6,192 calls, or the Wellbeing Links has received 6,192 referrals, and who have needed support as a result of COVID-19 since April 2020. So the numbers are quite significant, and we played a major part of that with our partners in delivering that service to our residents. In the same period, 3,845 referrals have been received for normal wellbeing service. So around 25% of those referrals were for residents of East Lindsey. And one particular comment I think is quite relevant from someone who's received the services. The wellbeing service is like an extended family. You don't see it or need them very often, but they are always there, which is quite a nice compliment for officers. Obviously, government have had a big push on homelessness, and our homeless teams and the work that's been done has been quite exemplary, and very pleased to record it in the report tonight. We've also managed to garner some funding through the Rough Sleeping Accommodation Programme for the next phase of government COVID-19 response to homelessness, includes the provision of long-term accommodation. And the teams have been working very closely to get this funding organised, and credit to Councillor Backett and her officers for securing over £400,000, which will enable 6 units of accommodation to be made available in East Lindsey.
Excuse me, Councillor Leyland, 30 seconds.
I beg your pardon. So I'm going on it. So Rough Sleeping annual snapshots in the report. Also like to give credit to our building control services, reaccreditation for high quality standards, and the housing standards issues across the district being picked up. And also finally, the Magna Vita production of Jack and the Beanstalk. Mr. Chairman, if you give me indulgence just for a few more minutes, I think it's a couple of things I would like to mention that are important.
Yes, carry on.
May I carry on? Thank you. We need to give credit across all the endeavours that our council officers do, and we have 2 of our planning officers have recently completed courses at Sheffield Hallam University funded by the council. Leanne Clark has gained an MSc in urban planning and achieved a merit, and Lewis Humphreys has also gained an MSc in urban planning and also achieved a merit, so congratulations to them. And just on a theme of thanking our officers and the comments you made earlier before this report, I would like to wish all councillors tonight a very Merry Christmas and a safe and happier New Year. We've had a torrid time this last year, and I know many of you will have been involved in community support, and that is much appreciated. And it's all worked well with the support that we've been able to give with our partners to our residents and communities. And I'd also like to wish our residents a happy Christmas and a safer New Year. I know many will have been affected by COVID in the most saddest of ways, and I think it's important that we realise that many people will have been impacted by COVID, and this might not be the easiest Christmas. So we do need to make sure that our residents look out for each other, and as our council work entails, to keep an eye out on how our residents are. But I do wish our residents the best Christmas that they can have. And lastly, to our officers, whatever your endeavour is in with the council, is within the council, I wish you a safe and happy Christmas. It's been a torrid year, and I cannot give anything but praise to all the work that has been done by our officers. And I'm sure you will join with me as councillors in that respect to give great thanks to our officer teams. As I say, whichever part of the council you work in, your work has been much appreciated. So thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Councillor Jill Makinson-Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, it's good to see the East Lindsey numbers. We're talking about the pandemic to start with. East Lindsey numbers are hugely down again today. So we're going in the right direction again. And I do think people take on board all the messages. It's as we said, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And hopefully we should be getting testing and we should be getting vaccinations around here before too long. Wellbeing has done a fine job for our vulnerable residents, and I know there are an awful lot of people who are very, very grateful to them. And we welcome the news that homelessness has received this grant. I was a bit surprised about how few places this amount of money buys. So I was just wondering if we have consulted other councils about getting more bang for our buck. It's £70,000 plus per unit seemed quite a lot of money to me. And on behalf of the independent group, I want to say a big thank you to all our staff, both at Manby and at Boston, as well as the teams at PS2, for being there to keep the wheels of our community turning over the past 261 days of the pandemic so effectively and efficiently. And I have to say, looking at our social media, my heart was touched by the little girl who asked us to look after her daddy over Christmas and New Year. Her daddy's one of our bin men, and it's not a pleasant job at the best of times, but in a pandemic, we're so grateful to them for doing such good work and never letting us down. We owe all our workforce a debt of gratitude, and we wish them all a very peaceful Christmas from the independent group in their happy family bubbles. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Howard, please.
If you'll just excuse the phone ringing in the background, that will be disappearing in a couple of seconds. Yes, can I start by saying that from our corner of the debating chamber, we certainly want to be associated, our group certainly wants to be associated with all the good wishes that are going out and all the congratulations to the hard-working teams within the council. And it is nice to see a report from the leader with so many good things to celebrate during this very, very difficult time. There's two questions I would specifically like to raise. The first being with regard to the COVID advisors. I would be interested to hear if during the course of their work, whether any difficulties in getting messages across or if there's been any resistance to the information that they're giving out, and just a little bit more outline on the efficiency of what they're doing. And I would also like to draw attention with regard to housing standards, that it does rely on tenants coming forward for our officers to intervene in getting properties properly up to the proper standards. And I know that there are some who are very reluctant to quote unquote upset their landlord unduly in case that bringing matters that do need attending forward actually results in repercussions on their behalf. So I would like to hear if there was some way that those issues could be reported, say, by councillors anonymously on behalf of tenants, or if there was some other way that the problems could be reported that didn't involve the tenants making themselves more vulnerable to negligent landlords. I would also ask that the leader, in his conversations with the people who are coordinating the response to the pandemic and also the distribution of the vaccine, to really argue the point with regard to the vaccine distribution, that we have several hard to reach places. And just because they're hard to reach doesn't mean that there aren't very vulnerable people there. And I'm talking of some of our smaller villages tucked away in the countryside, and also the northern part of the coast. Whilst it's great to have Skegness at the forefront of testing and vaccine distribution, please remember that there's a lot more coast to our area other than that is served by Skegness. And at that, I will leave it at that. But I do want to emphasise that our group are very, very appreciative of all the good things that our staff are doing at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ros Jackson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I particularly want to ask about the 6 units of accommodation. One of the things that came across in the rough sleeping scrutiny that we did was that there was quite a lot of enthusiasm amongst the team for a 72-hour assessment unit, which would be quite high, quite high maintenance really. So that people who were rough sleeping could come in for 72 hours and really be properly assessed and then moved on to somewhere more appropriate. Is this hub, are these 6 units of accommodation going to fit that criteria, or are they just 6 units of accommodation? So I'd like a bit of clarity on that. And also I just want to really congratulate the rough sleeping intervention team for and also the housing officers for securing this. It's good work that they're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ed Mossop, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and it's here to the last 3 speakers, quite frankly. Through you, Leader, I just thank the housing team and highlight the housing team and homelessness team for their timely intervention in a case that I was involved in recently, which involved across 2 towns through Mablethorpe and Louth, and what was probably one of the coldest nights of the year. It was dealt with very quickly. It was a complex case and opened my eyes to the fact that some of the accommodation may well not be appropriate and suitable, especially where cases are involving mental health issues. And obviously that highlights exactly what Councillor Ros Jackson's just been saying about assessment centres and there being some importance to having that as a safety net as well. I think the system is probably not entirely seamless as yet, else perhaps if it had been seamless, then I wouldn't have needed to have intervened, but it was dealt with extremely well, and it got this person through a volunteer off the streets and into safe and secure accommodation. So thank you for that.
You, Councillor Fiona Martin, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm sure that the leader was speaking on behalf of all of us when he thanked everybody across the council for the hard work that had gone in over the last few months. I'm sure whatever our political colour or affiliation, everybody was being spoken on behalf of. The leader was speaking on behalf of all of us when he made those comments and wished everybody a happy Christmas as far as they were able as well. I did just want to mention the housing standards team though, because they have been doing very sterling work in my area. I know because I keep getting regularly a copy of the notices that they've served, and it's not an easy job, but they have worked extremely hard under difficult circumstances, and I just want to thank them for the work they've done here in Horncastle. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'd like to thank the leader for the report. I think it's very good, considering the situation we've just had. I'd like to particularly mention the wellbeing team. I've had to contact them a number of times, and they have been exceptional. I believe one of the best, certainly the best in our area, the East Midlands, and maybe the country. So I just want to thank him for that and wish everybody, officers, staff and other councillors from our group, Merry Christmas, and let's hope for a better new year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wendy Bowkett, please.
Thank you. Just to clarify to Councillor Jill Mackinson-Sanders, the 6 units, it's only £73,833 per flat. They're not units, they're flats, and we're going to have 5 on the coast and we're going to have 1 inland. And they're accommodation for up to 3 years to get these people off the streets, and so that they can have look after their flats, pay their bills and move them on. And as for the 72-hour unit, we do not need that at the moment. We've got two out there at the moment that aren't talking to us, and that is it on the whole of East Lindsey. We're doing really, really well, and I just want to thank the homelessness team and also the wellbeing and my housing team, because they have done a fantastic job and I am so flipping proud of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Smith, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to firstly reiterate everybody's sentiments about the wellbeing team. I get so much good feedback from my parishes and from my residents on that service. But also, I'd like to talk a little bit about the homelessness report, because there is a real difference between rough sleeping and homelessness. We have many people who are homeless, people who sometimes rough sleep and then often get other places to stay, which are very temporary, and so on. And it's important to make a distinction around that. And whilst rough sleeping is the worst of these evils, we need to keep our eye on other forms of homelessness as well. And particularly, I would like to highlight women who are displaced through domestic violence. At the beginning of the first lockdown back in March, before we were actually locked down, when it was just being mooted, I did raise the issue of women who live with violent partners, and indeed men who live with violent partners and their children, and asked if we would be considering these people as homeless if they were displaced through domestic violence. It was months until I got a response. When I did finally get a response, I got the response that the council no longer funds women's refuges, so it isn't really our problem, which I think is a terrible thing. I'm sure that all councillors agree with me that the fact that we don't fund these things anymore is an awful thing which has been forced upon us. But we can't ignore the fact that these people, these families, these children are homeless. They should be classed as homeless. And I would really like it if we could have some sort of response, particularly at this awful time for anybody to be displaced and having to move into other people's homes and all the rules and regulations that follow that, because that is how most people become homeless. They end up sleeping on sofas and in front rooms and garages and Lord knows what. And I'd like to see some sort of proper response from the council, which includes, I know that we do these things. We support these people in all sorts of ways, but it's sort of invisible and piecemeal. And I'd like to see some sort of acknowledgement of these people and the way in which we help them, because I know we do help them.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Marsh, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to respond to that one a bit. I do sit on the scrutiny on public safety. There are homes within the county that are not, clearly for the obvious reasons, advertised where they are, where people who are subject to abuse can be taken, can be given accommodation with the children, and they are always available, or spaces are always available. Clearly they don't advertise where they are because they don't want offenders to find them, but I can assure Phil that there are sufficient, as far as I'm aware, facilities to make sure that no one needs to be in a violent relationship and fear that they can't find somewhere to go for safety.
Councillor Leyland, please.
Turning into questions to the Exec Board. Can I just thank for the interjections from my colleagues? I think it is helpful because I think the information they provided is relevant to the questions that were asked. Just to reiterate, the words that I said on behalf of were on behalf of the council in terms of our appreciation to all staff and the best wishes to our residents. We've dealt with this as a council. I think you've all been incredibly supportive. As has been said, whatever the political persuasion, the fact is we have residents that are dealing with something quite unprecedented, and the country and society have been affected in such a way that probably hasn't been seen since the end of the Second World War. So, these are quite incredible times that we're living through. And I'm more than happy to acknowledge on behalf of the council the excellent work that we do with our partners, and as I say, each and every council officer plays a part in that. And what has been quite interesting over this period of time is that invisible workers have become visible, and I think that's quite a turnaround for appreciating some of that work that goes on within the council. So just dealing with the questions and the good wishes that have been expressed. Thank you, Councillor Mackson Sanders, for your comments. I don't think there was actually a question in there, but I do recognise the comments that you're making. I appreciate those. Councillor Howard, just in respect of how we access information about private landlords, I think that's a fair question. There have been a number of cases where people that have been in vulnerable positions have been taken advantage of by employers, and this is another case where we have to give that those concerns a channel to be raised. So I will be raising that with officers, how that's done, and I'd be quite happy to pass that back on to you in terms of the housing standards. In terms of the COVID advisors, I will advise again, I will get the information about how they're being received on the street, and quite happy to feed that back. I haven't received anything as of yet, but I dare say as they are in place, I think it will only be proper to understand how they are being received. Just in terms of the question that you raised about access to hard to reach communities for the virus vaccine and the testing, I've probably been a bit of a broken record at the Laird Group this last few weeks raising that issue. We have a lot of older residents who are vulnerable. We have a lot of communities due to our rural sparsity that are hard to reach, and the combination of those things is a real challenge, and it's something I do consistently raise. Indeed, I did the same at today's meeting. Their understanding of that, they also recognise that quite a few residents will be housebound, and how we deal with the vaccination in terms of those particular people is being understood, but I won't let the issue go quiet. So just be assured on that point. And again, thank you for your good wishes to our staff and recognising the great work that's been done at the moment. Councillor Jackson, just in respect of your questions about the housing, I know that Councillor Bogut intervened to give you some information. I'm sure she'll be happy to discuss this further with you after the meeting. Probably not tonight, because we are going to finish quite late, I suspect, if we don't pick up the pace a bit, but I'm sure Councillor Bogut will happily give you the detail of how that all works. Rough Sleeping team have done fantastic work. There's no doubt about that. And it's an area which, up until recently, has been fairly hidden. So I'm pleased it's breaking into a discussion at council, because it is an important part of the work that we do, that we look after our most vulnerable, and indeed some of these people are the most vulnerable that we have. Councillor Mossop, again, thank you for your comments, and take your praise of the teams, and I'm sure that will be fed back through the Chief Executive. Councillor Martin, yes, of course, this is on behalf of all the council, and also recognising the good work of the Housing Standard team, and appreciate your comments, as Councillor Brooks as well. We have officers dealing with some very difficult situations, from economic development team dealing with the grants to the wellbeing team dealing with homelessness. And unfortunately, sometimes they do take abuse from callers, and it's something, the pressure that officers are under is quite immense. So I'm pleased that that's being recognised tonight. Councillor Bankett, thank you for your intervention. And Councillor Smith, in respect of domestic violence, I know this is a campaign that Lincolnshire County Council with Lincolnshire Police has been running, and the issue of women's refuges, I will happily understand that before I raise it as an issue elsewhere. And domestic violence is something that has been a great concern during the various lockdowns that we've had. It's become a hidden problem again, and it doesn't need to be so. It's a terrible scourge to be on the receiving end of any domestic abuse. So I'm quite happy to raise those issues where they need to be done. Thank you, Chairman. I think that about wraps it up, but I do appreciate all the positive comments tonight. As this is the last meeting before Christmas, so it's good that we show appreciation to the people that are really doing all the work out there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Item 9 is questions by the public, but there are none. Item 10, reports from scrutiny and policy panels. There are none. Item 11, movement in reserves, to consider a report on the council's budgetary position on the account of the change in nature of the financial landscape in 2021. Councillor Fry.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, before Councillor Fry comes in, may I just interject and provide some clarity? There were several questions under the item for declarations of interest about business grants, and I thought just for the purpose of the minutes, it would be helpful if members received some advice on that in order they could take a decision. Having looked at the report, it's clear that it's not actually a decision that's being made in respect of the award or criteria for business rate grants. It's simply around a transaction regarding the finances from reserves. If we look at recommendation 1 regarding reserves, therefore my advice is that all members who mentioned mentioned business rates and having received a grant under declarations of interest, that should be recorded as a personal but non-prejudicial interest, in that they have an interest in the item, but it's not such that would preclude them from voting on the matter. Again, because it is not either seeking to look at the criteria on which an award would be made or the actual award of the grant. If any members got a question on that before Councillor Fry comes in, I'm happy to take that. If not, for the purpose of the minutes, that could be recorded as my advice to council. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, because a lot of those grants were non-discretionary grants, weren't they? And if it's non-discretionary, it's coming from the government anyway. East Lindsey is just a vehicle for paying out the grants, isn't it? But it is government money, not East Lindsey ratepayers' money. Is that right, monitoring officer? Yeah.
It is, but it's the fact that actually, because the recipients have received a grant, it is, as we say, Section 31 money, so it's coming in and going straight out again. But to the ordinary member of the public, they will see that money has been distributed by East Lindsey District Council. Therefore, the purpose of clarity in the minutes, it's helpful to have that established. Therefore, that any member who may have a query from a member of the public, or indeed another member, can demonstrate that they thought about the process and whether they had an interest, and therefore acted in a reasonable way. And as I say, it's not an interest that I think precludes a member from taking part in the debate and decision making on that item. But of course, as ever, that remains a matter of decision for each individual member. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fry, please.
Yes, Chairman, thank you very much. That we've actually engaged in considerable debate this evening, and I'm suspecting that you would prefer the short version of this rather than the long version. So I'm going to pursue it in that way, and I will answer questions at the end, should you have detailed information that you still need. In summary, therefore, at its meeting on 2nd of December 2020, the Executive Board noted the Council's revenue and capital monitoring position at Q2 2020-21. As a result of the changing financial picture because of the national and local response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and also to allow the Council to use its resources more flexibly, a number of budget movements and the creation of a new earmarked reserve are required. The recommendations in respect of this are: 1, that Council approves the movement of funds between years through a budget virement of £8,720,380, which recognises the receipt of Section 31 grants for business rates and transfers to them, to the Business Rates Volatility Reserve, in order that they can be used in the Council's 2021-22 budget. This is a technical matter. It is simply the fact that the budget is an estimate, and in the following year we know exactly what we've done, and we know that, and government knows because they have remitted the rates to businesses, that we will require those funds in order to settle the account. Number 2, that the Council approves the creation of a wellbeing reserve, which will be used to smooth the wellbeing contract the Council has over its duration by putting aside surpluses or fund deficits each year. And thirdly, in relation to that, approves a contribution to the new wellbeing reserve of £543,000 from the Economic Growth Reserve, which is the surplus built up as at April the 1st, 2020. And finally, that Council considers and approves the use of £1.5 million of capital receipts to replace the funding from the Economic Growth Reserve for the Public Sector Hub project in order to maintain the balance in the Economic Growth Reserve so as to be able to use the reserve more flexibly. And the reason for this simply is to ensure Council's budgetary position takes account of the changing nature of the financial landscape in 2020-21. And Chairman, I therefore propose that Council approve the reserve movements as detailed and recommended. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to endeavour to answer them.
Thank you. Have we a seconder for that, please?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I'd like to second that and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I've got one blue hand up at the moment. Councillor Makinson Sanders, please.
Well, I'm a bit bemused by this. I did read it 4 times, and I have to admit, I thought I needed Adrian Sibley to explain it to me, because he does it in words of 1 syllable that I can understand. At this time, I just don't understand why we're letting the Economic Growth Reserve not be up to full speed, because surely at the time, with all the COVID problems we're going to have, surely we need the Economic Growth Reserve to be as big as it can be. And that's probably where I've misunderstood what you're trying to do. But perhaps you could just explain that to us, because I know members of my group were equally as bemused by what's happening now.
Yes, okay, obviously. Now, you're not bemused by the fact that we actually need to... This bears no relationship to... We're recognising the original proposals in terms of how we would fund this. It's simply the fact that the Economic Growth Reserve is flexible in the sense that it can be used to support revenue expenses and capital expenses, and it needs to be left in full availability to be able to do that. So therefore, using the capital receipts to fund the hub, which is a purely capital project, is the right thing to do, and just retains the money that's in the Economic Growth Reserve in a condition which is flexible in terms of its use in the future. But I'd be very happy for Adrian to also indicate, how he would see that.
Hold on, we got another councillor wishes to speak first.
Okay,
Councillor
that's
Fry. Councillor George Horton.
Thank you, Chair. I do apologise. Having read the report late today, I must declare an interest, as I have family members in housing and also family members in the wellbeing team. That's all it is. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. All right, go back to you, Councillor Fry.
Yes. Can I just ask you, Councillor, is there anybody else? Obviously, normally we take all the questions and then we
Yeah,
answer.
but there's no more blue hands up.
Okay, fine. Then, Councillor Makinson Sanders, would you wish for Adrian to explain it more clearly than I just did?
Well, I don't want to wait. I don't want to waste too much time. Perhaps if you'd like to send me an email and just explain it, then I'll circulate it around the group. I don't know why we didn't understand it, but it seemed incredibly technical. You can explain it in words of 1 or 2 syllables. I'd be really grateful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Did you wish to say anything, Councillor Leyland?
No, thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
No. Okay. Councillor Fry?
I have nothing more to add. I'm quite happy. I just would, wish, having put the proposal for Council to decide whether they wish to approve it or not.
We go to the vote then. And we go to the vote.
Did anyone second it?
Yes, Councillor Leyland.
Councillor Leyland did, yes.
Apologies.
That's why I went back to him.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Aldridge. Councillor Aldridge. Councillor Andrews.
4.
Councillor Ashton.
4.
Councillor Richard Avison.
4.
Councillor Stan Avison.
4.
Councillor Adrian Benjamin.
4.
Councillor Wendy Bowkett.
4.
Councillor Billy Brooks.
4.
Councillor Danny Brooks.
4.
Councillor Jimmy Brooks is absent. Councillor Trevor Burnham.
4.
Councillor Sandra Campbell-Wardman.
4.
Councillor Graham Cullen.
4.
Councillor Richard Cunnington. Oh, Councillor Cunnington's absent. Apologies. Councillor Mark Dannett.
4.
Councillor Colin Davey.
4.
Councillor Sid Dennis. Councillor Sid Dennis is absent still. I think he advised that he was leaving the meeting for a short while. Councillor Sarah Devereux.
4.
Councillor Colin Dickinson.
4.
Councillor Dick Edgington.
4.
Councillor Stephen Eyre.
4.
Councillor Martin Foster.
4.
Councillor Richard Fry.
4.
Councillor William Gray. Oh, Councillor Gray is absent. Apologies. Councillor Adam Grist.
4.
I've missed Councillor Chris Green. Apologies, but Councillor Green did leave the meeting, so I'm marking it as an apology. Thank you. Councillor Grist was 4. Councillor Will Grover.
4.
Councillor Alex Hall.
4.
Councillor David Hall.
4.
Councillor Sandra Harrison.
4.
Councillor Paul Hibbett Greaves.
4.
Councillor George Horton.
Only because I have members of family and wellbeing team, I will abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Howard.
4.
Councillor Ross Jackson.
4.
Councillor Neil Jones.
4.
Councillor Thomas Kemp.
4.
Councillor Steve Kirk.
4.
Councillor Terry Knowles.
4.
Councillor Andrew Leonard.
4.
Councillor Craig Leyland.
4.
Councillor Jill Makinson Sanders.
4.
Councillor David Manjom.
4.
Councillor Graham Marsh.
4.
Councillor Fiona Martin.
4.
Councillor Helen Matthews.
4.
Councillor Steve McMillan.
4.
Councillor Daniel McNally.
4.
Councillor Edward Mossop.
4.
Councillor Claire Newman.
4.
Councillor Sarah Parkin.
4.
Councillor Julie Platt.
4.
Councillor Paul Rickett.
4.
Councillor Jim Swanson.
4.
And Councillor Mel Turton-Levers is absent. Thank you, Chairman. I'll just come back to...
Did you miss me?
Sorry, have I missed somebody at the end? Who said that? Sorry.
That was Councillor Smith.
Councillor Smith. I do beg your pardon. Councillor Smith.
I'm in favour.
In favour, thank you. I'll just go back to, I think I couldn't hear Councillor Aldridge. Is Councillor
Yes,
Aldridge?
I'm in favour. Yes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Aldridge. Thank you. One moment, please, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. That's carried. That's 48 in favour, 1 abstention, 6 absent.
All right, thank you very much. Item 12, Council Tax Support Scheme for 2021-22. recommendation to the council will be considered by the exec board on the 2nd of December 2020. And presenting the paper is Councillor Fry.
Yes, thank you again, Chairman. The Local Council Tax Support Scheme replaced the former Council Tax Benefit Scheme from April 2013. The scheme for pensioners continues to be prescribed by government and allows up to 100% support against council tax liability. The scheme for working age claimants is determined locally. The government set out in its expectations for local authorities to protect the vulnerable and for schemes to support incentives to work. Since 2014-15, the council tax scheme grant from central government has been subsumed within the revenue support grant and is no longer separately identifiable. East Lindsey District Council has retained a council tax support scheme since April 2013 that requires all working age households to pay at least 25% of their council tax liability. The core principles of East Lindsey's local council tax support scheme are a protection for people over pension age as prescribed by government, all war disablement pensioners, war widow and war widowers, people with children, disabilities or caring responsibilities will be supported, retain the core features and continue to apply the wide range of provisions in the previous council tax scheme that recognise the additional needs of disabled, those with children and those with caring responsibilities. Indeed, incentives to work will be supported, so we retain the provision within the council tax benefit scheme, thereby maintaining the rate at which support is withdrawn as income increases. Scheme changes were made in 2016-17 to limit backdating to 1 month and restrict council tax support to Band D council tax liabilities and remove the second adult rebate. In 2019-20, a new class of care leavers was introduced. For 2021-22, the scheme has been reviewed and options considered. Executive Board approved its meeting on the 30th of September 2020, a consultation exercise in relation to the proposals which retain the core principles of the scheme for, first of all, continuation of the current council tax support scheme, including uprating in line with the Department of Work and Pensions annual update for allowances and premiums for housing benefit for 2021-22, and extend the backdating period for working age claimants from 1 month to 3 months. The consultation period ended on the 6th of November 2020, and the result was as follows. Lincolnshire County Council responded to the consultation confirming it has no comments or objections to the proposals. The Police and Crime Commissioner also confirmed they have noted the proposals. Both responses are included as part of the consultation report at Appendix A. The wider public consultation included publicity through media releases, website and social media, and a total of 14 responses were received. With such a low response rate, it has to be recognised that the results cannot be relied upon as being wholly representative or statistically significant. However, the high-level findings can be summarised as the majority of respondents, and this is 71%, agreed the council should retain the main characteristics of the scheme. Over 64% of respondents felt that the current scheme is fair and provides support to those who are most vulnerable. Also, the conclusion was that 64% of respondents agreed that we should increase the scheme in line with Department of Work and Pensions provision for 2021-22 and future years. And 57% agreed that council should extend the backdating period for working age claimants. The full consultation report is also shown in Appendix A. In summary, therefore, the report seeks council's approval for the Executive Board decision on the final proposals for the 2021-22 scheme, and the recommendations are: the council approves Exec Board recommendations for a continuation of the current council tax support scheme, including uprating in line with the Department of Works and Pensions annual update of allowances and premiums for housing benefits, and B, extend the backdating period for working age claimants from 1 month to 3 months. Secondly, the council delegate the approval for the 2021 final scheme policy to the section 151 officer in consultation with portfolio holder for finance, including administrative and minor changes in line with earlier decision of council. And the reason for this is that council must make any revision to its scheme or any replacement and agree its final scheme no later than the 11th of March 2021 in respect of the 2021-22 tax year, financial year, pardon me. Chairman, I therefore propose that council approve the recommendations for implementation of the function for the 2021 council tax support scheme. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that, please?
Yes, Chairman, I'm quite happy to second that. Thank you. And reserve my right to speak if possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sarah Devro, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I actually had my hand up to second the proposal, so thank you very much anyway.
Oh, right. Sorry about that. Councillor Tony Howard.
Thank you, Chair. I just thank Councillor Fry for the report he's put before us. And he did mention, both in the report and verbally, that there'd been a response from the Police and Crime Commissioner. However, the Police and Crime Commissioner went on to suggest an extension of the scheme with regard to the Special Constabulary. And there is no mention of the consideration given to that scheme in the report, and nor has Councillor Fry alluded to it in his verbal submission. That leaves me wondering why there's not been any reference to it. I think it's a little bit cheeky that the Police and Crime Commissioner should be willing to spend our money on rewarding people in his employ. But if, of course, he was suggesting that the police budget could fund this part of the scheme that he's putting forward, then I think it's an idea that we could maybe consider. But there is no comment, everything is silent as to what consideration has been given to this extra proposal. As I say, I think it's a little bit cheeky that the Police and Crime Commissioner expects his volunteers to work for nothing, but that we can offer them an incentive to do that work. But it's certainly an interesting proposal, and if the police service were prepared to put the funds in to support that part, then that would be something that, again, I think this chamber might want to debate. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no other speakers, Councillor Leyland, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. And just picking up on Councillor Howard's point relating to the Special Constables idea, this was discussed at a group leaders meeting, a district council leaders meeting with the PCC, Mark Jones. And the point was made that we have many groups who do sterling community work that would benefit from such a scheme. And at this particular time, it wasn't actually something that would probably be progressed by the various councils, but there would be a sort of more of a discussion about it. So I think where we are, not diminishing in any way the work that our special constables do, I think we have a wide range of people out there that could benefit from something like this, and that's why we've not progressed it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Fry, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Leyland is absolutely right, and I was advised that Police and Crime Commissioner had been advised of the attitude of the councils generally, and the fact that there were a lot of other people in sort of similar categories who would probably deserve that report, and we really couldn't, first of all, identify them and necessarily open it up in that way. And I agree with Councillor Howard that I think it was probably a bit of a cheeky suggestion, and if he wanted to support this from police funds, then that's probably the right direction to go.
Okay, as there wasn't many people asking questions, can I take it that most of you approve this? If you show your blue hands, it saves us going through all the rigmarole of calling names out. Yeah, okay, that's carried. Thank you. Saved a bit of time. Right. Item 13, public speaking at remote meetings of planning committee. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will try not to take too much of council time this evening on this. Very simply, council will remember that a few months ago, when we first started having our remote meetings on Zoom, there was an imperative to get that system up and running so the business of the council, the business of the planning authority, could carry on unimpeded. And it was felt at that time, when Zoom was effectively new to all of us, then it made the process somewhat hostage to fortune and IT to try and run before we could walk with the whole conventional arrangements of public speaking rights at planning committee. I still think that was absolutely the right thing to do, as I'm very much aware there were councils which tried to run rather than walk at that point, and it did throw up problems. However, I've been very, very aware of councillors' views on this, and certainly even in my own experience as a ward representative doing the written submissions, that there's a valid point to be made that the process is added to if people are able to, as one councillor has put it, have their day in court, to have their 3 minutes before the planning committee and to put their case in the time-honoured fashion. I'm very pleased that we've been able to review this, and with the support of Councillor McNally as the chairman of that committee, that we are confident that our processes, our systems, our grasp of IT, and more than that, the grasp of IT that parish councils and members of the public have picked up over the last few months has come on leaps and bounds. Entirely anecdotally, I was part of a social meeting only just before the weekend, held on Zoom, where we wished happy birthday to a 90-year-old who was tuned in without help on Zoom. So I am confident that the world and all of our skills have moved on. I know that licensing on this authority has been holding meetings with public participation for some time. On another authority I have taken part in both planning and licensing hearings where public speakers have been part of that. So we know that it can be done. We know that it can be done well, and we are confident that now is the right time, given that we are looking to have to still be in remote meetings for several months to come now. Now is the right time to get this process back to how it normally functions, and I very much hope that that will go a significant distance toward satisfying those members of the council that have raised concerns with me. I know they've raised concerns with the chairman of the committee and others as well. So I shall leave that there and move formally that the two recommendations are adopted. I would just add that recommendation 2 is simply we are still flying a little bit blind on this, and if there are slight tweaks that need to be made to the process to make the committee run a little bit more smoothly, then what we're asking for is delegation to do those tweaks. That delegation going to the Assistant Director of Planning in consultation with the chairman of the planning committee, Councillor McNally, and with myself, simply so that in order to do those tweaks, we don't have to bring the whole thing back to a full council every time. So I shall formally move both of those recommendations and look for a second, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll second the proposal.
Yeah, who's that? Danny McNally.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously got in before I got in before him, but as he's the chairman and he's not as good looking as me, I'll let him.
Okay, right. Can I ask everybody who's got a blue hand up, unless they want to speak on this item, please take your blue hand down. A lot of you have left it up from when we did the vote just now. There's still some up there. Okay, right. Councillor McNally, did you wish to speak?
No, I was meant to say I'll reserve my right to speak before I was rudely interrupted.
Yeah, that's what I came back to you. Right, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just quickly, I'd like you to consider. It says on page 22, the second bullet point, must not exceed the allocated time for the verbal presentation. I welcome a written alternative, but I would like to suggest that you give residents a maximum word count. I think that would be very helpful.
Councillor Will Grover.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do wish to speak. Yeah, I'm really pleased by this proposal. It's been a challenging year for a lot of us, and there's been lots of things that have been the new normal. And whilst I did initially support the previous proposals, I'm very pleased to see this come to council, and that public speaking at planning committee will return, and it's not going to stay the new normal. But I do, as Councillor Ashton says, it does add something to the process. But I also want to just pay compliment to all the officers and chairs of all the meetings and committees that have been held over remote meetings, because the high standard in which the meetings have been conducted I just think has been incredible, and it means we've been able to get to this stage about bringing speakers back to committee. And I did actually recently speak at, well, I didn't speak at committee, but a written submission. And but having previously spoken, whether speakers have been in favour or against applications, I think it just gives that democratic accountability and that ability for speakers just to finally get their full point across, which I think it really has been missing sometimes. And finally, Mr. Chairman, if I can just finish by also commenting on your and congratulating you on your recent milestone birthday. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Sarah Parkin, please.
Yeah, I've had quite a contentious application, as Tom will know, in the conservation area, where it didn't go the residents' way. An application was approved that they were against, and they did feel mightily aggrieved that they didn't have that full opportunity to participate. So I want to kind of issue my thanks to the council for this as we're moving forward now, particularly to Councillor Ashton, who met those residents, because it has meant a lot to them that this is now being rectified. And I think this does set the council in a good light moving forward. We have talked tonight about whatever the new normal is. I think it is unlikely that moving forward we will ever go back to how things were. I think, you know, we are, however we meet moving forward as a council, I don't think it will be as it was. And so I think this actually shows that we're receptive, we're moving forward, we're engaging with the public really, really well. And I think it genuinely will make for better decision making. So it isn't just about allowing members of the public to have their day in court. It is a way to genuinely facilitate better planning decisions by the committee. And I think hearing from the residents directly will really help with that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Makinson-Sanders, please.
Thank you. I too support this. It's really important for ward members to be able to support their communities and to go to council and to put forward the residents' feelings on certain planning applications. There has been quite a lot of disquiet about this lack of democratic process in my group, and about the call-in process, full stop. And I'm glad that this is all being looked at, and pleased it's being addressed positively. So it's a good way forward, and I hope, Tom, that the call-in process to lead to things getting committee will become clearer, because there have been some hiccups over recent times.
Councillor Phil Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. I hope Councillor Ashton's sitting down, because I want to wholeheartedly agree with this motion and support him in everything he says. And it's not very often that we agree on everything. So I think this is a great thing, moving back to getting proper public responses as well as ward member responses. That's just great. And I'd like to echo what Sarah said there. I think that whilst we do want to get back to normal, normal isn't going to be what we used to do and just everybody in a room. I think that this electronic process widens availability to people across our wide region, and it just improves democracy and decision making altogether, particularly for our residents. So I really congratulate Tom on moving on this. But I would also say that I think it is important that we don't leave anyone behind, particularly at the moment, people who don't have the tech and so on. It is important to have that written submission that can be read in the meeting. If someone makes a written submission, I agree with Ros, it needs to be limited. 280 words is 3 minutes, I think, or 2 minutes. I can't remember how long you get now. But yeah, having a word limited thing, so people, but then having that actually read, whether that's by an officer or by a member of their ward council or whatever, having it read into the meeting, so that those words are there resonating in the room, even if the person can't do it because of technical difficulties, I think is really important as well. So congratulations, I will be supporting this.
Councillor Edward Mossop, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's a good point about word counts from Councillor Jackson, which has just been re-emphasised. Time and time again, I do find I have to defend the planning process, and I like to do that because I'm somebody who believes in a policy that you should stick to it. But of course, there are rare occasions when things are finely balanced, as they say, and those are the things that come to committee which are very contentious. This is going back to something that we had before in terms of speaking from members of the public, and I assume and hope, because it wasn't clear when I first read this report that it included ward members, but I'm fairly assured that it does include ward members, because there's nothing worse than being frustrated at the lack of being able to come and speak to the planning committee and be able to interact and get that accountability and represent those that have lobbied and not lobbied, spoken to you about planning applications, whether it be planning parish councils or individuals. And I think it just shows that as diligent ward members that we are doing our job. I just wanted to go on to the second recommendation, which is about further delegation so that we don't have to bring this back to full council. That's absolutely right, Councillor Ashton. But I would hope that you would, within that, and I'm sure the chairman of the planning committee will do that, but in that consultation include his members of his committee so that they get a word in, because they're the ones that are on the ground, they're the ones that are making the decision and putting their hands up and have to defend that out to the public. So I hope that Danny, you will be able to, if there are further tweaks that need to be made, and I think there probably could be, that you will allow the planning committee to have their say at the end of one of your monthly planning committees, when you don't have quite that many cases and applications to go through like we used to in the old days. Thank you.
Councillor Jim Swanson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had my blue hand up for quite a while. I was beginning to wonder if I'd ever get a chance.
You were in line. You're in order. Go on, carry on.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very happy to see this. Quite frankly, Councillor McNally will know that I've been raising that point in committee on a couple of occasions, and so I'm very pleased to see it. I think, as Councillor Mossop said, item number 2 on a proposal is vital, because I still think there are some refinements to be made. If we want to get back to where we were, we've got to remember there were different lengths of time. Some had 5 minutes, some had 3 minutes. And I'm not sure that this document actually gets that all set out. So I do believe that item 2 is needed. There is one thing that I would like to say, and that is I want it to be noted that members of the committee had the right to interrogate the ward member or the parish council or the applicant or the objectors. And I think that's something that as I said, I want noted that it's not there, and I hope that it's included in part 2 by some means, fair or foul.
Are you finished, Jim? Jim, you've gone on mute.
Yes, I'm on mute because I was finished.
You're finished, right. Councillor Sid Dennis, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I do agree with this, with both of these parts of this legislation. I've been on the planning committee for a number of years, and just lately, there's been a certain uncomfortability with where we're at. It's a bit of a one-sided process. Jim makes me laugh. He can't wait to start interrogating. I think that's a bit harsh, but I know what he means. He likes to warm the feet. But I will say that, well done, Jim. But it's been long needed, and all power to Tom. We know I did lobby him about this as other planning committee members did, and we've got a good committee there, and this is excellent news. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go any further, Sid, I'd just like to wish you well, and it's nice to have you back. Right, Councillor McNally, please.
Yeah.
You're next up, Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. There's not much to add. The only thing I will say that everything that happened before at committee, where you was able to ask questions, the 5 minute, that will all be the same, except actually we're putting more in place now than what was there before. Because if you didn't turn up to that committee meeting, you couldn't have a letter read out. Whereas now, actually, if you can't get online, you can have a letter read out. So we're actually offering more than what was there before. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton, please.
Thank you very much.
we'll just cover very briefly the comments that have been made and thank generally for the positive comments that have come back from councillors right across the chamber. I think you've got an entirely valid point, Councillor Jackson, in respect of word count, and that's something that I'm sure can be picked up under the delegation as we take it forward and as it begins to operate. Councillor Grover, again, thank you. I would concur completely that we have still achieved we have achieved across the whole of the council a high standard of remote meetings. We have also maintained a high standard of decision making in planning. It hasn't been the process which people have necessarily been used to, but I have full confidence in all of the members of the planning committee as trained planning councillors to still be able to evaluate the papers and the written submissions and everything else that they've had in front of them and achieve a sound decision based on that evidence. But you're right in what you say. It is the democratic feel to it. It is the democratic approach that is every bit as important. And to those of us that we all do represent local communities, then that is an incredibly important part of our job, all of us as councillors. And I mean, I'm grateful to Councillor Parkin for your comments. Simply, I'm very much aware on a personal level of the strength of feeling of your residents, and I'm delighted that we've been able to do something that it doesn't necessarily, it can't change the decision that we've arrived at, but it does at least add something to the process. And I'm scribbled in various orders. Councillor Makinson Sanders, you will always find me a willing champion of members' rights in respect of planning and call-in, and this is an issue that other councillors have raised with me, and it is something which discussions have been held on. But I would genuinely welcome your views and the views of all members of the council, not necessarily this evening, but please do get in touch, and I'd look forward to a conversation with you, Councillor Makinson Sanders, of you and your views and members of your group view on that, because it's absolutely right that there is full buy-in from all elected members into the processes that we are running here.
Thank you, I much appreciate that. Thank you.
And Councillor Smith, remarkably in planning, we tend to agree on more than we don't actually, which I think is one of the things I absolutely adore about this job. I would add that yeah, again, we can any points that come up. I'm sure members of the planning committee, and this applies to the comments of Councillor Mossop, comments that members of the committee are raising, I'm sure you'll be the first to raise your thoughts on how it is working with the chairman, and I'm pleased that we're able to facilitate that. Similar remarks to Councillor Swanson, and yes, I'm absolutely categorically reassure you that cross-examination remains. It is an incredibly important part of the process. I've got experience of, obviously, in my distant days when I sat on the East Lindsey Committee, I've got experience of other committees where processes are different, and I can genuinely say that my experience is that you gain so much from being able to ask those qualifying questions just to check those facts.
30 seconds, Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. That pretty much sums it up. Again, thank you, Councillor Dennis, for your comments. And I'm genuinely pleased for the support of members and look forward to working with you all. And the chairman of the committee, thank you, Councillor McNally, for seconding, to continue the processes that we have and the good service that we have as a planning authority. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Is everyone happy with doing the blue hand to save time on the vote? Yeah.
Yeah, Chairman, if I could just say, it's Councillor Dennis, if I could just say I came in halfway through that, so I shan't be voting. Okay.
Okay, okay. Oh, it's gone over 40. So I think we can say that's carried. Okay. Does anyone want a quick break? No?
Yes, please, Chairman.
All right.
Yes,
As quick
Chairman.
as you can. I won't